Hi everyone, I'm Ewan. I'm a member of Fire and Dice, and I'm here to talk today about our undefeated run at the Spring ITT. If you've heard of me before, it's probably because I have a little blog I do called Chaos' Ascendant, and today mixing it up and doing a little bit of, essentially a bit of a slideshow version of that blog, talking about my games, showing some photos, trying to go through how I played each game, what I was trying to achieve, how the team was trying to go. Because the Spring ITT was a team tournament, and I think teams is a really, really fun way to play 40k. You've got obviously how you're trying to predict how you and your opponent's game is going to go, how that pairs with the matrix, how you're are you trying to push, are you trying to defend, are you just trying to keep things tight in addition to all of the other stuff that you have when you play 40k. So just wanted to have a bit of talk about that. I normally do a blog about this, but they've been taking so long to do. I wanted to try something a little different, a little quicker to do. I tend to take somewhere in the region of 150 to 180 photos throughout the tournament, and that takes quite a long time to annotate and write up. And while I do enjoy it, it does take a hell of a lot of time to write up and upload and get everything right, and I wanted something that was a little less exhausting, so hence giving this a try. The other probably interesting thing is I was on Death Guard, and I wasn't taking any Defilers. Defilers obviously came out recently. They're a really big, powerful unit. They've been very popular in essentially all Chaos lists since then, but I ended up not taking any. So just to address that first, I've been running Death Guard quite a lot in 2026. I've really enjoyed them. I'll talk through the list I did take in a second, so the one that's on screen. But as for why no Defilers, fitting in one Defiler was really awkward. It's 250 points. I don't have anything that sort of swaps in and out with that really neatly. I have to essentially drop 3 units to take one Defiler, which didn't feel like a good trade. Taking 2 Defilers is perfectly reasonable and very well might have been correct. A lot of people at the event did have a lot of success with exactly 2 Defilers. But when I went 2 Defilers, I kind of ended up going down the slippery slope of wanting 3 and having Mortarion as well, and having a sort of really aggressive stat techy type of list. And that just didn't fit with our overall team comp. We had big demons, we have Necrons with the Vault, we have Nids. We had 3 quite heavy monster mash-esque type lists already. And while Defilers do quite differently to each of those, it means that a matchup like Ultramarines, where they can point and click and delete something very easily, became a real issue for us. This type of Death Guard I've always felt has gone very well into those style of lists. It doesn't have any easy targets. It's much more flexible in pairings. So while the 1 or 2 Defiler list might have been an improvement, there were a couple of lists I really liked at the event that I'd be tempted to copy if I was running this again going future. For what we wanted, especially from Matrix, this list is very well for us in Matrix, and function. It's not quite a blunter, but it has a very competitive and essentially in the game. Nothing really should blow this out. The only thing I was really worried is about heavy gun lines that have a lot of good OC screening, something like Tau with Pathfinders, where I can't force their Riptides to come in within contagion range for me, and their screens just keep auto-seeing all of my drones and things that get in the middle. So Tau, Nids, and Guard, all of which have big gun lines at the back and lots of OC battle line that tend to go and get in the way with the things I wanted to avoid. Otherwise, everything else I felt generally either pretty neutral or confident into with this style of build. So throughout the video, when we're talking about pairings, we view things on a 1 to 5 matrix. So 1 being very bad, 2 being we think this is going to be a slight loss, 3 being draw, 4 being a minor win, 5 being a major win. And typically for almost every round, I was looking at 1 minor loss, 2 or 3 draws, 1 or 2 minor wins. So it was a nice flexible matrix that we could go into and then use that to pair around along with everyone else that might have slightly more skewedness, just the later things. So as for this list, it's Death Guard, it's Virulent Vectorum. That is really, really important because that has Sticky, and combined with things like Scouting, Spawn, and Poxwalkers, that allows you to sticky some objectives and then come off them, which is something I do quite a lot, and then force the opponent, even if you go first, to have to put the first unit out there in a lot of cases. So you start off that trading game really well. The other big thing about Virulent Vectorum is that it has access to -1 damage, and that changes so many matchups, especially a lot of combat matchups. And that means a lot of the opponent's hammers, a lot of things like, say, Blood Angels, just can't really get going. It's very hard to push into Death Guard, and it just changes that matchups. It makes the opponent's army that's likely to score the best, which tends to be aggressive melee hammy, just can't really function. So that's why it's Virulent Vectorum. To run through the list, we have the Mini Mortarian Demon Prince. So toughness 12, 5 feel no pain, 10 wounds, really, really hard unit to chew through. Also helps really nicely with the CP economy along with the Tallyman. Tallyman gives you a chance to get an extra CP. Demon Prince of Nurgle allows you to have a unit within 12 to have a unit cost 1 less CP. The two combined means that you're always going to have really good access to stratagems. It means you can do things like go into a turn with 3 CP and still have the ability to both interrupt and -1 damage as long as you're close to the prince. So you can blunt the first charge that comes in and then interrupt on the second to help create a big swing. And one of the big sort of things that I really like about Death Guard and this list in general is that you can win the game on the opponent's turn. If they go into you and you do a heroic and an overwatch or an intervene, something like that, you can really swing the game in the opponent's turn in a way that's feels quite fair, but is very powerful, and it's not just what you can do on your turn. It's really nice. So Demon Prince and Tallyman for CP economy and general resilience. Lord of Contagion to go with the Death Shroud and turn them to an absolute murder machine. So this is a really nice tempo piece. It allows you to 6-inch deep strike. It forces the opponent to play around it really really aggressively with the screening. Keeps a lot of their units tied to their backfield, so it makes it again harder to push, or they risk the Death Shroud coming in and blowing out a key unit. Blight Lords are probably the most interesting choice. They are a unit that seems really unimpressive on paper. They're essentially 10 toughness 7 Terminators with some strength 5 AP2 damage to combat and a variety of shooting. The two reasons that I like them is, one, T7, 4-pin Van, and access to -1 damage makes them a real nightmare to chew through. It means you can rapid ingress them really aggressively. You can set up heroics and not worry if you're going to get shot first in a lot of occasions. And two, the shooting output, it looks really unimpressive on paper, but combined with their rule and Death Guard contagions, can make something really powerful. So to take the Reaper autocannon, it's 4 shots with sustained and dev wounds at 711. If they're in contagion, they'll be -1 toughness and more often than not -1 save. And the Blight Lord's rule is that you get +1 strength and an additional AP when you're shooting something within contagion range. So suddenly the Blight Lord, the Reaper autocannon, is essentially going at strength 8 into something that's -1 toughness, AP3 damage 1, and you get 1 CP to get 4 rerolls to hit on wounds. So suddenly you have a really reliable shooting profile that actually does a really lot of damage, almost irrespective of target. These often come out and they one-shot a tank just with shooting, and then you've got the combat profile as well on top of it, which is not fantastic for a unit of this point, but is certainly not trivial as well. Moving down, we have essentially the chaff package. So 1 Poxwalk unit, which tends to infiltrate one of the objectives, stick it and then probably die, but tends to go and get in the way and just be a very handy utility unit. Along with that, Chaos Spawn. These are absolutely fantastic in Death Guard. They do a little bit of mortals when they are attacked, and they're toughness 7 with a 5 feel no pain, so they can be really awkward, and they really set up the early game very nicely. They scout, they're not fast, but they're movement 8, and they're one of the few units that can go through walls. They're really great at getting enemies within contagion range, which then helps set up things like the 6-inch deep fright and the death shrouds, or putting something in contagion range for the blight lords to come in and just hose down to there. At the end, none of these three ever get their points back, but they set up the game so well for everything else in the list. So these guys sort of put the early pressure on scoring, and then this brick essentially is what capitalises it and helps heaps up the pressure. So we have 2 bloat drones with flash mowers, which is the combat one, which is a really nice sort of marine killing profile. It's 7-1-2, which with extra AP contagion a lot of the time tends to be 7-2-2 into something that's -1 toughness. So against marine bodies, they're hitting on 3s, running on 2s with lethal hits. 10 attacks, they'll often get through a marine squad, or they'll leave them on sort of small enough that they should hopefully take the objective. And all of these guys here are toughness 9 with 10 wounds, with a 3-up armor and 5-up in on. So they're not hard to kill, but they are very awkward to kill effectively, and they are all very good, especially alongside the spawn, of drawing enemies out and then using those 2 big Terminator bricks to deliver a really big counter attack. So that is the sort of general game plan on this. After the flash mower drones, we have the blight launcher variant, which is a really effective shooting profile, 10-3 with D6+2 shots. Really nice generalist profile, can chip away at tanks, can combine fire to take something big, just really nice unit in general. And then we have the blight haulers, a little bit more specialised, but they have multi-melter and a missile launcher. They get +1 to hit and wound monster vehicles, so they are your anti-tank. They do realistically need the opponent to come close to get maximum use, to get off their multi-melters, but they're not horrible even if you're shooting something at 8 either way. All of this stuff here is reasonably fast, and whichever is the least valuable in a matchup is very nice to help put up the second wave, which is either the blight haulers or the bloat drones with flesh mows that tend to sort of come in, help keep the pressure on, turns 2-3, set the game up type of thing before, again, the Terminators come in and deliver the hammer blow. So one of the skills of the list is looking at the opponent's list and going, which of these 2 units, the flesh mow drones or the blight hauler drones, is least valuable in the matchup? Okay, let's be aggressive with those units and force the opponent to come up with their more powerful stuff. So that's the Death Guard unit list. Elsewhere on the team, we had Byron, and Byron was on Chaos Demons. He's been on Chaos Demons for essentially the entire edition, and it's a very standard big Chaos Demons list. We've got all the big guys, and we have 2 Plague Bearers, which is sort of the workhorses of the list, do really well scoring, and then a couple of other little bits as well. We've then got Dennis on Necrons. The big thing being we've got the Silent King, and we have the Tesseract Vault, which is a really impressive, scary, and shooting platform, backed up by some Doomsday Arcs. So a little bit more of a gun line. We've got the Catan to help it sort of stop being rushed down. To be honest, I don't know how this works. I've played with Dennis for a long time now. We've joked we have very different play style and play patterns of how we like to approach the game. I tend to like being a little bit more on the aggressive side. Dennis tends to be a little bit more on the defensive side. I could not run this list to any success, but Dennis has been absolutely smashing people with it in the previous tournaments. And the Vault is one of those units that's very powerful, but not seen very often for a couple of reasons, most notably its size. Tends to stick out a lot, and we find a lot of people tend to mispair around it in particular. A lot of times the Necron Mirror, Dennis has come out and gone, yeah, I 20-0'd them. The Tesla Fears just picked up the sort of 20-man 4-up in one warrior brick. And then it sort of went from there. So never quite sure how this list works, but it's very nicely. We have Haristo on a rather standard sort of invasion fleet setup. Lots of gaunts to do primary denial, a couple of characters to provide a bit of combat punch, some gene stealers to either provide pressure or counter-attack, and then lots of big shooting monsters to help do all the damage. Your typical sort of blunter list, and Haristo's role in pairings is essentially take the matchups we don't want to set up the other armies to do better, which you do great at. Then we have Sam on CSM, which answers the other questions to why I wasn't on CSM. Albeit for teams, I tend to do better on Death Guard than CSM anyway. Death Guard tends to have really easy to predict matrices as well, which is very handy. So Sam, Renegade Raiders, we've got a few training pieces and characters with Vashtor. Then we have an ACDC blob, Chosen, a couple of defilers, the mandatory Masters, the Maelstrom package, some Noise Marines, and of course 2 defilers. And Sam ended up very much being one of our hammers throughout the event. So as the 5 lists, we had that's my right one, we had quite high expectations going into the event. We were one of the teams called out by the UKTC sort of preview, and we'd been doing quite well for a while. We'd gone 4 wins and a draw at our previous ITT, so we wanted to at least be in that sort of that bracket, that conversation. So we got to the end of the event and we were in a shot to win it or podium. We thought we had a very good team. We had a very strong lineup of lists as well, and we have some really great players like Byron's been. I think Byron's currently ranked 2nd in the world on his demons. Well, ranked 2nd in the world and uses his demons. So we felt in good spirits, and going into it, we also had a second team that we ended up playing in round 2, which I'll get to in a second. But that was a sort of general preview going into it.